All right, welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today we're tackling a really powerful analysis of our chaotic modern world. The author calls it an age of planetary entanglement, but also, and this is key, an age of viscerality and dread. So let's get into it.
So, where does this all begin? The argument really starts here. Our time, right now, is defined by this just wild mix of forces. You've got what the author calls fast capitalism, then you've got these new kinds of warfare, and, of course, the total saturation of our lives by digital tech. It's like everything's been put on hyperdrive, and it's tangled us all up in these crazy global connections. Okay, so how are we going to break this all down? It's a pretty clear path. First, we'll look at what this entangled age really is. Then we'll pivot to the world of walls that's popping up everywhere. After that, we'll dive into a pretty dark idea, a messianism of destruction. And finally, we'll see how all of this is leading to what's being called democracy's final collision. All right, section 1. Let's get right into it. And this part asks a really fundamental question, one that kind of sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about. What is technology, really? And what is it doing to us, deep down? So the source pulls from the philosopher Martin Heidegger, who had this idea that technology has, a double essence. Think of it like two sides of the same coin. On one side, it's what he called instrumentum. It's just a tool, right? A hammer, a phone. It's a simple means to an end. But, and this is the big but, on the other side, it's an anthropology. It's not just a tool we use, it's a core human activity that actually defines who we are and shapes how we see the world, how we even think about what's true. And this two-sided view of tech, it's the source of some really deep anxieties that have been with us for a long time. You know the feeling, right? There's that fear that we'll just be treated like things, like cogs in a giant machine. Then there's the classic sci-fi fear that our own machines will eventually enslave us. And underneath it all, there's this kind of nostalgia, this longing for a simpler, less mediated life, this worry that we're losing something fundamental, losing a real connection to nature because everything is seen through a screen. Okay, so let's take that idea and see how it plays out in the real physical world. Because here's the paradox. At the exact same time we're all becoming more and more entangled digitally, we're seeing this brutal countermovement, a massive push towards, building walls, containing people, and enclosing spaces. And to really get a grip on this, the author gives us a really important term, borderization. Now, this isn't just about building a wall and calling it a day. It's an active process. It's this ongoing effort by world powers to transform certain places, to make them completely impassable. But here's the catch. Only for certain groups of people, for populations that are seen as, unwanted. So you can see the crucial point here. Borders aren't just lines on a map. They're not neutral. As the author puts it, they are literally the organized violence that underpins our whole world order. And that violence isn't abstract. It's shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, it's people drowning, it's the day-to-day humiliation of being treated as less than human. Okay, now look at this number. Because it just completely flips a story we hear all the time. You know the narrative, right? The one about foreign aid, where wealthy countries are generously helping out the global south. Well, the data tells a very, very different story. Between 1980 and 2009 alone, there was a net flow of $1.4 trillion, not into Africa, but out of Africa to the rest of the world. So the wealth is actually flowing in the opposite direction of what many of us think. And that reality, this huge drain of resources, it just doesn't line up with those simplistic things you hear people say, like, why don't they just stay home? This incredible economic pressure is a huge part of a much bigger, much more violent system that forces people to leave everything behind. And if the economic pressure wasn't enough, look at this. This shows another piece of the puzzle, and it's absolutely chilling. These aren't just regular weapons of war. The argument is that these are tools designed to make places literally unlivable. We're talking about thermobark bombs that suck the oxygen out of the air, cluster bombs that can make huge areas deadly for decades, and just systematically bombing infrastructure. It's organized violence with a specific goal, to destroy the very idea of home and create fugitives. So you have this constant state of violence and exclusion. And it's not just happening out there, it's actually changing how we think. It's creating this really frightening new mindset, a new political and even spiritual landscape, where people are starting to give up on the whole idea of a better future. The term for this is negative messianism. And it's a wild idea, You know how most messianic beliefs are about hope, right? Waiting for redemption or salvation? Well, this is the opposite. It's a worldview that completely gives up on redemption and instead just embraces destruction. It's this dark mindset that says, look, the end is coming anyway, so why wait? Let's just bring it on. Let's get this over with. And you can see how this thinking just fuels a certain kind of politics, right? A politics of purity, of separating us from them. It's a total rejection of the hard work it takes to repair things, to fix broken relationships. Instead, it's so much easier to just sever the ties completely. And it's driven by what the author calls a will to kill instead of a will to care for the world we all have to share. Okay, so here we are, our final section. And this is where everything we've talked about, the technology, the walls, this destructive mindset, it all comes together. And it's heading for a direct collision, a massive crash with the idea of democracy itself. And here's a really weird paradox. Our super advanced futuristic technology is actually pushing us back towards something that looks a lot like ancient animism. I mean, think about it. Our phones, our devices, they've become extensions of our own bodies, our own minds. The line between us and the object is getting super blurry. And agency, the ability to act, it's not just a human thing anymore. It's something that's shared between us and our tech. And this all builds to what the author says is the real defining conflict of our time. Forget the clash of civilizations or battles between religions. The real fight, the main event, is between liberal democracy and global financial capitalism. It's the rule of the people versus the rule of finance. It's humanism versus this weird, nihilistic techno-millenarianism. And according to this analysis, it's a fight that democracy is losing, badly. And it's losing through something called state capture. It's a pretty simple idea, really. It's when the government itself, all its levers and mechanisms, gets taken over by powerful private economic interests. It stops serving the public and starts serving one goal, protecting and growing private profit, no matter the social cost. But there's another, even deeper problem. The very idea of the human is changing. For centuries, civilization was built on repression, right? You had to keep a lid on your unconscious desires and impulses. But now we have social media, which is basically the plumbing for the unconscious. It lets all that stuff roam free. And the person that emerges from this post-repressive human, is not the calm, rational, thoughtful individual that democracy was designed for. And that leaves us with a final and frankly pretty chilling takeaway. You've got this huge clash between capitalism and democracy. And at the same time, the kind of rational person democracy needs is disappearing. So the big question for the 21st century, the one that hangs over everything, isn't just, can we save democracy? It's, can we have any kind of real shared political life at all?